Episode 171, Reducing Stress While Running a Wedding Business. This Week in Weddings is a support group for wedding industry entrepreneurs.
We're the ones behind the scenes, planning and designing the event, arranging the flowers, creating the invitations, or taking the photographs for a couple's most important day ever. No pressure.
If you've been in the wedding industry for more than a minute, you know it's not all cake and confetti. Running a wedding business is hard, and it's certainly not for the faint of heart.
This Week in Weddings is where we catch up on this often crazy but amazing industry and share tips on how to be a better business owner, all while supporting each other along the way.
You're listening to This Week in Weddings with Kimberly Rhodes and Annie Roach. Hi guys, I'm Kimberly Rhodes, owner of Hitched Events.
And I'm Annie Roach, owner of 5x7 Designs.
Annie, I can't think of a better time for this episode, to be honest.
We are all, even if you're a very calm person, I feel like you're stressed out right now. And
I take that back because I feel like any time is a good time for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like any time in my life, this episode would be helpful to me because we are talking about reducing stress.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we all need it. I mean, we are at a very heightened point in our country, which, I mean, I feel I'm stressed out when I wake up in the morning.
Yeah. I also feel like our jobs more so like my wedding planner friends, we jokingly say, like, we dream about this other job that people have where you just like punch a time clock.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't really think about it again.
Well, they say an event planner / wedding planner is the 6th most stressful job in the world.
That's crazy. I mean, I don't doubt it.
Mm-hmm.
I think air traffic controller is number one.
Mm-hmm. But you're basically an air traffic controller. You're controlling people instead of instead of airplanes,
Yeah.
And pilots.
That's true. Well, and I think too, I mean, yes, planning is stressful. I think just the industry is stressful in general because it's such an important day. It's like you have one chance to get it right. You can't screw up. You can't go back.
It's the whole like perfectionism that stresses us out in making things perfect.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to talk about reducing stress. I actually found Victoria on Facebook. We're in a Facebook group together, and she mentioned that she was like a reduced stress specialist. And I was like, I didn't know that was a thing, but you need to come talk to us.
Tell us your secrets. Tell us your ways, because it is hard also too. I mean, we're in a time where a lot of our businesses have, we're not making the same money that we used to be. Our cash flow is on hold too, and that can lead to stress. I mean, money is probably one of the biggest instigators of stress.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. Well, after contracting shingles twice before the age of 30, Victoria Smith knew she needed to recalibrate her relationship to stress. Following her own wellness journey and becoming certified as a health and life coach, Victoria now helps women to reduce their stress, live more fully, and better perform in their daily lives.
Through Stress Less Ladies, Victoria supports women in stress reduction through one-to-one coaching, group coaching, online programs, and is an experienced international public speaker. Her go-to motto, life isn't stressless, but we can stress less.
Let's welcome to the show, Victoria Smith.
Welcome to the show, Victoria. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks for having me.
We're hoping you can take all of our stress away.
Yes.
Bit by bit.
We're thinking Zen thoughts right now and focusing that stress energy on other things.
Exactly. Well, before we dive in to how we can stress less, tell us a little bit about your story and your background. To be 100% honest with you, I didn't know shingles was stress related until I read your bio.
So it's not stress related for everyone. People tend to get shingles in their 50s and 60s, and that's just sort of an age related thing. And I remember saying to my doctor, the first time I got shingles, this is not the advert for shingles. I was, 27, I think the first time. I'm like, this doesn't seem right. And he sort of asked about my lifestyle. And funnily enough, I was working in events at the time. And I was just burning the wick at both ends, right? I didn't have much of a social life because I was just trying to prove myself at work. And then I was just so unable to manage my stress, or hadn't learned how to manage my stress at the time. And so it just ended in burnout. And for me, burnout it did show up in like getting the common cough or cold and just being tired all the time. And then eventually my body was like, enough. And it just brought shingles to me, which was
Yeah.
very, very painful. But the funny thing was, like, I didn't learn from that the first time, right? I got it twice. And so the second time I was still at the same job. I was pregnant with my first kid. My parents were getting divorced. And I worked in oil and gas and they were doing layoffs. So it was just like the holy trifecta.
Oh gosh.
But I was
Yeah.
like, I can't keep doing this, right? Like something's got to change. And so really it took a long time to go on a bit of a journey of like, what does wellness mean? What does stress reduction mean? What does it mean to be the same person that I am? Because I would say I'm like a stress ball by nature. So how can I actually live with that without it owning me constantly? And so that's kind of where I was able to get to myself. And so I was so passionate about the change that I became certified as a health and a life coach, because what I noticed was that in my training, whether people were coming to me with like family issues, work issues, relationship issues, stress is at the center of it, right? So if
Yeah.
you can help people with stress, you can pretty much improve every area of their life. And so I'm super passionate about it.
Well, it's really interesting to me that you said burnout, because I feel like in our industry, burnout is like a legit thing.
Uh-huh.
And I always equated burnout with just being like, I work too much. Like I'm tired because I work too much. But it's interesting that you're correlating it to stress, because I totally can see that. Like I totally agree with that and just hadn't put it in that context before.
Yeah. Well, and when you're working too much, that's that's physical stress as well, right? You're probably not
Right.
getting enough sleep. You're probably not doing as many good things for your body. You're not getting the kind of rest that you need, and not just like sleep rest, but like time away from work rest. And so that stress shows up in your body, and it's not just shingles, right? Like people just get tired or depressed or anxious, or they start to lose their motivation around work, right? Like that, when people are just like over it, they're
Yeah.
usually pretty stressed.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about how we can stress less. I mean, I feel like in some ways stress can be good,
100%.
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Be a motivator, but
So there's this thing called no, I know you're like, stress good. What? There's this thing called eustress, eustress, which is good stress. And so that the studies show that how you interpret stress is actually really important to defining whether it's good or bad for you, right? So if you and I were to approach the same challenge, and you were like, this is the worst job ever, I'm going to hate every second of it, and I'm like, this is a really cool challenge, we're going to have very different experiences of that. So I'm not like Pollyanna saying like, just think positive thoughts, because like, let's be real.
Right.
But how you reframe things is really important. What goes on in your head and how you identify what's happening to you is very important. So I'm going to guess that at the beginning of your career in events, like things were so much more exciting and brand new, and everything felt like a learning experience and a challenge. And then when you've done something 15 million times, right, it's less exciting and feels more like a drag, right?
Right.
So
For sure.
that does weigh into like what feels stressful and what doesn't. So there is good stress, learning something new, getting a challenge. When we physically are moving our body and raising our heart rate, that's good stress. So there is good stress.
Yeah. Okay. But there's also bad stress.
Yeah. And the bad stress is really about how you are interpreting, again, what's happening into your body. Are you feeling emotionally drained? Are you feeling mentally just not inspired, not with it, just like, don't touch me, I don't want to deal with it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that does take a toll. It takes a toll physically, it takes a toll emotionally. And if you don't start to deal with it, it will deal with you, right? It'll show up in
That's deep.
yeah, but it did for me, right? Like shingles twice. It was like not even just the one time. It was like, girl, you did not learn your lesson the first time. I'm
Yeah.
gonna slap you with this again until you realize. And shingles is friggin' painful. So I was like, no, this can't be my life. And I was dealing with a lot of constant depression and anxiety. And it is a tough industry, right? We were saying, I think before we hit record, that event planning is like number 6 most stressful.
Yep.
And I can totally relate to that. So I think what we've got to do is start to realize what is within your control in your job as an event planner. and learn some strategies to let go of the things that aren't, right? Because I used to do events for a Fortune 500 company. So I did employee engagement. It wasn't weddings, but like 500 plus people events. You know, there were dinners, there were galas, there were executive visits, all that fun stuff. And the thing that used to drive me nuts the most was like you could plan everything down to a T, and then something screws up with the caterer, or something happens here, or there's a weather, or there's COVID, right? Like I can't imagine the change that like everyone's had to pivot for events.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that I would really say for event planners or anyone associated with the event industry is like really hone in on what you have control over. Really, really hone in on that. Do the best you can around that. Rock what you can control, but you've got to get into a good practice of being able to let go of what you can't control.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I feel like that's just good advice in life.
Yeah. But events are typically like,
I saw
a lot out of your control.
Funny meme the other day. It was like talking about like conspiracy theories and conspiracy theories. Like kudos to the people that believe those, because like it was like an event, but as an event planner, something's gonna go wrong. So like you think with a conspiracy theory, oh bless your hearts, because something's always gonna wrong. No one's ever gonna keep this a secret forever.
Yeah.
Like that cracked me up. How
that's funny.
Yeah, people think that conspiracy theories can really happen because something always goes wrong.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and the funny thing is, if you think of all the events that you've planned and all the challenges that have happened, does the bride and groomer or whoever's paying for the event, are they always aware of every single detail that went wrong?
I mean, hopefully they're never aware.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and that would happen to me as an event planner all the time as well, right? You feel bad because you feel like something that you've planned has not gone right, but everyone's still having a good time. Everyone's still enjoying it. And so we've got to be able to let go of some of that, because at the end of the day, it's how people feel. It's the experience that they have. It's not that particular tiny detail, even though that detail is important to you, right?
Yeah. So in the world of COVID and, our cash flow not being the same as it was before and not working the same amount as we were before, I mean, there's a lot of just like internal stress with that. And these are things we obviously cannot control. But Victoria, do you have any tips about how to like not stress about those things we can't control?
Reduce the stress.
Yeah. So let's point on reducing the stress, because here's you're never not going to be stressed. We are never going to be a Zen monk on a mountaintop. Like that's just not realistic. And I don't think we would want that kind of life anyways, right? Like we like some change and some excitement going on, and stress is a part of that. But it's about how we can help you stress less. So what I've been saying to people as regards to COVID is we have to re-envision what 2020 and 2021 looks like, right? We just have to, because if we are so stuck in this is the way it was, this is the way it should be, then we are going to be miserable, because it's not going to be that. So so I ask people to really sit down, and let's take 2020 for an example. When you get to December 31st, 2020, what do you want to say you achieved? What do you want to say happened this year?
I want to say I survived.
Yeah.
Because right now,
peace out 2020, you've been a bitch.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. I don't want that for you. I don't want you to just say I survived, right? And surviving is great, but I would like you to get to a point of feeling like I did something, I achieved something, I accomplished something. And that's where I'm telling people you got to shift it from like, what are those outside things? Like I did a vision board workshop with women at the beginning of 2020. And like, I feel for them, because on their boards, there was like vacations and like beautiful outdoor weddings and all the things.
Yeah.
Those aren't happening. But what does the new vision of 2020 look like that is within your control, right? What is a mindset that you want to adopt? What is a challenge that like, maybe the vision is I have pivoted and I've brought in X amount of income or whatnot, or I have been able to shift my model so that I make more revenue in this area, right? What does that look like for 2020 instead? And that takes some time to like think about and process, and you're still going to have to change it as it goes, but start to hold 2020 to that standard instead of the like burn it to the ground, because we all said that at the end of 2019, and look what 2020 brought us. So I feel like if we do that at the end of 2020, we're going to be
Oh,
screwed
Lord.
for 2021.
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah.
think reevaluating goals too is probably a part of it. Like Annie, you've said so many times that you're like money driven. And so
Mhm.
like your financial goals for 2020 now not being the same as they were probably before, I would imagine that that is also a stressor
Yeah. No,
when
for
it's
sure.
like, I guess it's just like re-envisioning what that goal was because
Mhm.
it's just not necessarily realistic anymore. At least for me, I can only
Yeah.
speak for myself. Like
Yeah.
my 2020 financial goals are not that I had in 2019 are just not realistic today.
Yeah. So on the goal setting outside of 2020, like I would always say, also find a goal of like, how do you want to feel?
Mm.
Right? Because we often set goals of like, I want to finish that degree, or I want to make that amount of money, or I want to do this many events. But we get there, and do you actually feel great about it? Sometimes, yes, like 100%, there are these outside markers, but we need something that like have a goal for how you want to feel, because that's something that you can see along the way, right? Day to day, you could be like, okay, I'm getting a bit of this. This is feeling good. This is feeling, maybe you want to feel vibrant. Maybe you want to feel energetic. Maybe you want to feel more joy, like whatever that is, and start to create that every single day. Because that's something, again, that you can control, and it really affects your quality of life.
Yeah.
Mm.
I definitely have not goal set from a feeling place
Yeah.
at all.
And like, I'm a type A as well. I get it. Like that feels weird at first,
Yeah.
but try, experiment with it.
Well, and even like one of my 2020 goals, Annie, I don't know if you remember, we set this one. I was like, I want to work out 200 times in 2020.
Mhm.
I'm not quite on track. I mean, I'm going towards it, but I'm not quite on schedule. However, like that is very measurable. I'm like a very measurable goal person because I think we've all been taught that. Like,
Yeah.
make a SMART goal and it has to be measurable. Whereas like a feeling is not necessarily like that measurable goal, but also is important.
Yeah, but I think SMART goals do miss out on that. Like, yes, I've set a million SMART goals and achieved them, and they were great, but I wasn't necessarily happy. And right, so what do we all want at the end of our lives, right? We want to be happy. So how can we make sure that your goal includes some of that along the way? And just
Yeah.
like, because we can set goals that are really hard to get to. So if you're not enjoying that process, you're probably not going to enjoy the end result if you've been miserable the whole way, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to stress you out more.
I'm stressed out about being less stressed. I'm just kidding. But I mean, Victoria, are there like I mean, I'm guessing like, there's like stress triggers that,
Mhm.
like, pretty generic ones in business. What are like the biggest stress triggers out there?
So they're really different for everyone depending on your personality, right? Sometimes it's like just confrontation is a trigger for a lot of people. A lot of it is based in like your personality, right? So are you triggered by money issues, right? I come from a family of like, we have money issues. So like when COVID hits and you're like seeing your income go down, you're like, yeah. Whereas other people can like feel a bit more like, oh, it'll all be okay. They'll ride that storm. So it depends on you. So money is definitely a big trigger. Family dynamics is a big trigger, right? Like we all have that relative that drives us up the wall. Confrontation, politics, certain, like there are different triggers in every front. But once you know what your trigger is, then have you ever read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear?
I have.
Okay, perfect. So you'll
No.
know what I'm talking about here. But so for the listeners who don't know, a habit works in a pretty simple cycle. So you've got your cue, which is whatever is going to trigger you to want to feel a different state. And then you have got your, oh my God, am I not going to remember at the moment? Cue, craving. You're craving a change of state, right? So if you're stressed, you want to feel more calm or you want to feel escape or whatever that is. Then there's the action that you're taking, the behavior, whether you, how you respond to that. And then there's the reward. Do you actually feel that change of state? So the stress trigger is your cue, right? And the thing is, those cues are always going to be there. They're almost never going to go away. You're still going to have that irritating coworker. You're still going to have the bride that loses their mind. You're still going to have like whatever it is. And you're still going to want to feel that same way, whether it's escape or calm or whatever that is. So what we actually need to identify is what is the behavior you're taking right now? And can you switch that up for something else that gives you the same response, the same reward at the end of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And the thing about that book that I really like is like, it's not about, and I'm summarizing very poorly, but it's not about the actual habit as it is like the start, like what gets things on a cycle to build the habit. Like it's, if the tiny little thing is setting your clothes out the night before, then that makes you work out, then that makes you blah, blah, blah. It's like the whole tiny little instigation point is what to focus on, not the actual action.
Yeah, creating these tiny micro changes, like getting 1% better every day. Like when like if I'm working with people on stress reduction, if I'm working with clients on a 90-day program, we're not trying to do everything in week 1, right? So start to layer in little habits for stress reduction and you'll see huge change over time. But it takes a while because a lot of these behaviors that we have that like increase our stress are learned and they're ingrained in us. So it takes some time to unlearn them.
Yeah. So I hear a lot, Victoria, that like exercise is super important for stress reduction. A, is that true? And B, are there other things along with that that are like good stress reduction things?
So yes, exercise is good for stress reduction. And the reason is, and I had to do this a lot at the beginning of COVID. I don't know about you, but those first 2 weeks of COVID, when everything was hitting the fan, my heart rate was just like pumping, right? Because it's like our financial situation. My husband got laid off. He works in events. My work changed drastically. Do a lot of public speaking. That changed. And so stress was really high. And so the thing that really is helpful about exercise is that it purposely raises your heart rate, which then sends a signal to your brain that you have fought the lion or whatever the frightening thing is. And then it sends calming hormones throughout your body. So it actually does specifically bring your stress down. And it doesn't have to be like a hardcore, like at the gym, pumping iron, whatever workout, right? It can be a walk around the neighborhood that raises your heart rate. It's just about raising the heart rate. So that can be through any kind of fit. My kids and I play What Time Is It, Mr. Wolf, running up and down the hallways in our house. That raises my heart rate now. But the thing about this, that using the exercise as a stress relief, is you have to allow your body to ride that wave. So like if I was to exercise and then go on Twitter afterwards, that's not going to do me a whole lot of good, or it depends what your Twitter feed is like. Mine is just garbage right now. And so you've got to then use that momentum to like keep it going as best you can. So yes, exercise works. Other things that you can do in conjunction with that is, it sounds really silly, but like I want you to be finding some time for joy or something you enjoy every single day. And like that doesn't have to be huge. That can be 5 minutes.
See, I think my joy for a minute there, or well, not a minute, for forever, has been snacks. And that could be a vicious cycle.
Right?
Carbohydrates. Yeah. Vicious cycle with those.
Yeah. So it's balancing it. I've 100% been baking all kinds of stuff. I'm like thinking I'm Martha Stewart in this house. But so it's finding the balance of those things as well. Right. And again, it's how do you want to feel in the long run? So if is that making you feel good temporarily, or is it making you feel good for a sort of a longer period of time? And what are the other things, right? Like we just need a mixture of things, right? Because it can't only be exercise, because then we would just be like working out like mad people, and that's not good either. It can't only be the food or the alcohol or anything like that. But what are some of the other things? Like, I mean, you see everyone going like doing puzzles galore right now. Maybe it's going for a walk. Maybe it's still talking with your friends, right? Like you need to find some sort of release from that tension, because you're just building it up if you don't find those releases and those moments of joy. Because like as trite as it sounds, we only get one shot at this life. So if you're not going to enjoy the process, we've got to recalibrate something, right?
Yeah.
So like, and it can be like, what are the things you used to like when you were a kid? What's the adult version of that, right? Because adulting is rough. I don't like doing my taxes. I don't like doing my bookkeeping or anything like that. I don't like taking my compost out. But like, what are some of the other things we can layer in that make it more enjoyable?
Yeah, those are all good questions. I feel like my like bad habit, and I'm saying it's a bad habit, of like downtime is like watching trashy reality television, which I enjoy, but it's also stressful to watch
Yeah.
because it's like a lot of fighting and a lot of screaming. And like, to me, it's entertainment, but at the same time, it's not relaxing.
Yeah.
So I might need to adjust that.
I'm never going to take away your reality TV. Like I 100% just binged Below Deck and I'd never seen it before. And I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. But it is, again, finding that, like, can you swap out like 2 nights a week for something different, right? Because our bodies and our minds need some variety in there to help sort of turn those levers and balance things out. So, and I'm like, balance is a really tough word because I just don't think there's anything specifically like balance. You start to know for yourself, like, are you getting enough sleep? Is that TV starting to affect your quality of sleep? Are you having really vivid dreams if you watch it late at night, kind of thing? Do you have a wind down routine to end the TV, right? So that you have some screen-free time before bed. Like, those are sort of the habits that you can start to add in. I find, like, for a lot of people, taking away a habit is really hard to do. But adding in one that slowly starts to chip away at the one that's not serving you can be a lot more helpful.
Yeah. Are you I hear meditation too for stress reduction. I don't really meditate, to be honest.
So there are proven benefits.
Annie, do you meditate?
Dude, no.
I mean, I was asking. I didn't know.
Yeah, there are proven benefits. I hate meditation. Like full flat out, I hate meditation. And I think because for a lot of us, it's very hard to turn our brain off. What I do encourage people to do who hate meditation, like myself, is it's this thing called the release meditation technique. And what I love about it is it's 2 minutes. That is
like
it.
that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it's developed by Brendan Burchard, who's a high performance coach based out of the
Brendan
States.
Burchard.
Yeah. And it's all about so bring forth to your brain that most recent stressful activity. You take a big inhale, got to get the breath in through your belly so that it goes right up to your prefrontal cortex. And on the exhale, you say release. And I know that sounds silly to like say it out loud. And it's, a little bit Seinfeld, like serenity now. But it is about like expelling some of that energy from your body and physically.
2 minutes. Yeah. You do it repeatedly for 2 minutes?
Yeah. So you inhale, release, and you just sort of visualize letting that go. But the key part comes right afterwards. So once you've done 1 to 2 minutes of this and you're feeling a bit more, you've got the oxygen to your prefrontal cortex, you can start to think more critically. Then you set an intention for how you want to show up in your next activity. So the purpose of it is to leave that bad moment where it is, not pretend it never happened, because like it happened. Let it go and then move forward how you want to. So I want to show up as the best version of myself for my next client. I want to show up calm and clear so that my client is not panicking about the catering order that didn't come through, right? So setting that intention, and when you set the intention, your brain will then look for evidence of that. And so that's what I said earlier about the perception, right? So if you're like, nope, this day is shit, your brain is like, yeah, you're right. Let me show you all the examples of why that's true. But if you're like, nope, I'm going to show up this way, your brain will start to look for those examples to reinforce that. So
I think you got a little woo-woo for Annie.
No. I like a little bit of woo-woo. I mean, we all need a little woo-woo in our lives, especially now.
Change out the word intention for goal then, right? My goal is to show up as a calm version for my client, right? It's the same thing, right? Just change out the word.
Yeah. I like that. I started reading Brendan Burchard's book. I forget what it's called.
High Performance Habits?
High Performance Habits.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's yellow and black, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I have it. I've read like half of it and I have not finished.
That is fair.
I clearly have not gotten to the breathing exercise.
See, maybe you read that and for a couple nights and then watch some Bravo for a couple nights a week. There
you go.
There you go. Change it up a bit.
Yeah.
There you go. I like that.
But I'm not taking away your Bravo. I don't want to live without Bravo.
Yeah. Same. Victoria, are there anything else that we haven't touched on that our listeners and ourselves can do just to generally reduce the amount of stress in our lives? We're going to breathe and release.
Yeah.
We're going to exercise. We're going to think about the things we can control versus the things we can't control.
What about stressful clients?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So this is a juicy one. A lot of it really comes down to boundaries, right?
What
And
are them?
that is
What are boundaries?
right. And that's tricky with clients, especially, right? Because you are the person, serving their needs. So it's going to be very like there's so many different variations of stressful clients having been on the other side. So it's hard to give you like a one size fits all answer, but part of it is in training them, right? So if you know how if someone's really stressful and then you start to match their energy and then it just kind of like triggers up, right?
Yeah.
So how can you start to sort of model the like calm reaction for them? The like, this is all going to be okay. We will figure it out so that then helps them bring down their stress, which brings down the stress for the whole encounter, right? Now, there are certain special human beings who just don't respond to that. But they're, for the most part, if you are the counter to that, people start to react to your energy as well. And so, what I would say is try and sort of hold that space for them, hear what their concerns are. Absolutely, right? Like people just want to be heard. So, hear their concern and then let them know, like, what you're doing about it, what the solution is going to be. Like, and if you don't know the answer yet, like, we're working on it. We're aware that this is happening. This is what we're going to do next to try and figure out that next step, right? People just want reassurance and they want to know that it's going to be okay. Whether it's like their dress doesn't fit anymore or like, the invitations, whatever, So holding that space for them.
Have y'all read The Four Agreements? The book,
I
The Four Agreements.
started it and I didn't like it.
Oh, okay. Well, the premise, one of the four agreements is basically that it's not about you. Like things that happen it's not personal.
Yeah.
And I have a tendency to take things personally that's just who I am as a human. I'm very hard on myself. And so I think for me, that's part of my stress is that I like have very high standards for myself. So I'm like, no one else has imposed that level of expectation. It's totally self-imposed. And so for me, that's like why I hold stress is because like I am stressing myself out, not necessarily that anyone else is stressing me out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we're our own worst enemies. And Kimberly, we're in the business of selling perfection.
Yeah.
And it's that also that perfection leads down to just one day most of the time. So you got to make that one day, that 12-hour span or whatever, perfect.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
And it's not just for one person. It's like make it perfect for 10 people this year or 12
Yeah.
people or whatever it is,
So, and I'm just going to throw this out there. Maybe there needs to be some recalibration of the word perfect and not using that as much with your clients. Because if you keep saying that, then they're going to expect that.
Yeah.
But maybe sort of also in the sort of subtle training of your clients that like the imperfections can be absolutely beautiful. Like I got married outside in Scotland on my wedding day. It started chucking down rain at the end of our ceremony. And some of my favorite photos from our wedding are us, like me in my wedding dress, like carrying chairs inside. There were 12 of us. So it was like, there was no other people to do that. And like, that's one of my favorite photos. Right.
Yeah.
And so like embracing those moments where they can happen. And if you're training your clients to hear perfection and see perfection, that makes the imperfections so much more painful for them. And so trying to sort of just change the language up a little bit of how can we make this like more special or more magical or whatever that is, that's not perfect. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it.
And then the last thing that I would just say on this sort of like how we can like decrease that stress in general and overall is it is a layering effect of habits, right? Like you're not going to run a marathon tomorrow if you've never run a marathon before, right? And so you're not going to instantly stress less tomorrow.
Yeah.
But like we were saying with those small changes that you layer in over time, what are those that we can do for you? So one of the things that I'm doing this year is a free challenge for everyone. And it's the Stress Less Habits Challenge. So if you go to stresslesshabits.com, every month it's going to be a brand new little micro challenge, kind of like Gretchen Rubin's like a year, what was it, Year of Happiness or something like that? The Happiness Project?
Happiness Project,
yeah. Where every day you're going to start building that new micro habit. I'm not adding like an hour to your day because I know we don't have an hour, but like 5 minutes this month, 5 minutes that month, and just swapping things out. And so July is all about 5 minutes of joy every day. because we need to start getting you to have fun with that. So as an event planner, like what are the things, the parts of your job that you really do find fun, and try not to rush through those, right? Try and actually, enjoy those moments so that when you can balance out some of the harder, like, the less joyful parts of your job, right?
Yeah. And for me, that would be like the design part is
Yeah.
the part I love. And the logistics is the part that I love because I'm good at them, but I'm not just like dying to do logistics today.
Yeah.
It does not fuel my creative brain, but it is a necessary evil.
And at the end of every
Not
event or every project, if you're supplying a smaller part of the wedding, like soak in the good things that you did, right? The things that went really well, because we so easily gloss over our accomplishments and our achievements and we focus on the nitpicking things. So try and like see the beautiful things that did happen, the beautiful invitations you did create, the amazing balloon display or whatever it is. Just try and soak that in for a moment.
Mm-hmm. It's all good. You didn't mention
soaking it
massage,
in.
I noticed, Victoria,
I'm
but that
soaking
is
it.
on my list.
Well, I don't know about you, but we're not allowed to go get massaged yet. So I'm trying to be realistic here.
I actually don't even know if we're allowed to do
I don't
massages.
know
Have
either.
those opened back up? I'm not quite sure, to be honest. But it is on my list of favorite things to do for
Yeah.
sure.
What I would say is like self-care looks different for everybody. What works for you might not work for me. So there are also like I created like a list of almost 100 because I couldn't quite figure out 100 list of self-care and self-isolation ideas. So there's
Oh.
something for everybody, and almost all of them can be done in quarantine, but everything in self-care and that's just at stresslessladies.com if you want that for free. Because
amazing.
You got to try some new things out, especially if you're like, I've never done this before. Will I like it? Sometimes we think we will hate something. We actually enjoy it. So you just got to try it out.
Okay, so the two websites we need to send people to are stresslessladies.com and stresslesshabits.com.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we will link to all of that in our show notes so people can find you.
Sounds good.
And we appreciate you.
Yes.
Thank you for having it. I just like a shout out to all the event planners. Like I did it for 5 years. I 100% know how stressful it can be. Just take it one little step at a time and you'll start to see big change over the long run. This is not like an overnight thing, but you'll build lasting skills for life.
Well, and I also think too, like just the burnout of our whole industry being a real thing, that like I feel like these little tips can help that part of the job, regardless if you're a planner or photographer or whatever. Like just the sheer stress in our industry creates a lot of burnout that feels manageable if you like do some of these things. I'm gonna take some deep breaths right now.
Release.
Thanks, Victoria. We appreciate you.
Ladies.
And don't forget, if you've gotten value out of the podcast, including this week's episode, we would love for you to contribute to our Patreon page.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. We've got several different levels that are very economical, and they just help us produce quality education and quality episodes just like this one.
Exactly. You can go to thisweekinweddings.com/support. As little as 10 cents a day helps us with our out-of-pocket expenses.
Thank you.